September 3rd, 2012, Medellín, Colombia. A 69-year-old woman walks out of a butcher shop on Calle 35. She is carrying meat. It is an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. A man on a motorcycle pulls up. He fires one shot. The bullet enters the back of her head. She is dead before she hits the pavement. Her name is Griselda Blanco. She had survived 40 years in the cocaine trade, hundreds of assassination attempts, 3 husbands she had killed herself, a federal prison sentence in the United States, deportation, exile. She was brought down by a butcher's errand. How does someone this dangerous die like this? Keep watching. In 2024, Netflix released a series about her life. Sofia Vergara played her. It was one of the most watched shows of the year.
Last 3 years, Griselda Blanco has owned Miami, distributing cocaine.
Miss Blanco.
Let's get to work. There's a lot of women who'll leave the man but not the life. I swear. I know what I'm doing.
But television has rules. Networks have lawyers. Stories get softened. This is not that version. Griselda Blanco built the cocaine pipeline that supplied Miami before Pablo Escobar's name meant anything in America. She operated a private murder organization that killed over 200 people. She personally pulled the trigger on at least one of her husbands. And she did all of it in a world where no woman had ever held that kind of power before. This is what actually happened. What did Netflix leave out? Keep watching. The story of Griselda Blanco does not begin with cocaine. Griselda grew up with a mother described by those who knew her as brutal. The home was not safe. The street was not safe. She learned early that safety was something you created, not something you waited for. The first reported murder attributed to Griselda Blanco occurred when she was 11 years old. The account, which emerged years later through criminal investigations and testimony, describes a kidnapping attempt. A child from a wealthier neighborhood taken for ransom. When the scheme went wrong, Griselda allegedly shot the boy. She was 11. This account is disputed. It has never been formally verified, but it circulated widely enough within Colombia's criminal world to become part of how people understood her. Whether it happened exactly as described is almost beside the point. The story tells you what the people who knew her believed she was capable of. And in her world, that belief was its own kind of power. By her teenage years, Griselda was working the streets of Medellín, pickpocketing, petty theft, and eventually prostitution. She had no formal education beyond childhood. What she had instead was an extraordinary capacity to read people, to understand what they wanted, and to use that understanding as leverage. She also had a skill that would define her early criminal career. She could forge documents, passports, identity papers, customs declarations. In a country where identity was bureaucratically enforced and borders were controlled by paperwork, Griselda discovered that the right document in the right hands could move anything and anyone, anywhere. It was a skill that would travel with her all the way to the United States. Who becomes that person? Keep watching. Her first marriage to Carlos Trujillo produced 3 sons. It also produced her introduction to organised crime at a larger scale. Trujillo was connected to smuggling networks moving contraband through Colombia. But it was her second significant relationship, with a man named Alberto Bravo, that changed everything. Bravo was connected to cocaine networks forming in Colombia in the early 1970s. This was before the Medellín Cartel, before Pablo Escobar's name meant anything beyond his own neighborhood. The cocaine trade was still finding its shape, and Griselda recognized it for what it was: not just a product, a system, and systems could be controlled by whoever built the best infrastructure. Together, Griselda and Alberto Bravo moved their operation to the United States. First to New York, where she established a smuggling network using an innovation that became her signature: lingerie, specially designed undergarments with hidden compartments. Women couriers wearing modified bras, girdles and underwear packed with cocaine. In the early 1970s, when customs agents were looking for bulk shipments and male smugglers, women carrying product in their clothing passed through airports almost without scrutiny. It was low-tech, invisible, and extraordinarily effective. By the time law enforcement caught up with the method, Griselda had already moved on to bigger infrastructure. The partnership with Bravo eventually collapsed, as most of Griselda's partnerships did. In 1975, in a parking lot in Bogotá, they met to discuss what had become a dispute over money and territory. The meeting did not end well for Alberto Bravo. Griselda shot him. Not through an intermediary, not through a hired killer. She pulled out a weapon and fired. This is the detail that separates Griselda Blanco from almost every other major drug trafficker of her era. Pablo Escobar ordered violence. The Cali cartel managed it from a distance. Griselda Blanco committed it personally. She was 32 years old. She had 3 sons. And she had just killed her husband in a parking lot in broad daylight. She was already on her way to Miami. This is who she was before Miami. What happened when she got there? In the mid-1970s, Miami was a city in transition. Tourism, retirement communities, Cuban exile politics. A humid, somewhat sleepy American city on the edge of the Caribbean. It was also the most logical entry point for cocaine moving north from Colombia. The geography was simple. Miami sits at the tip of Florida, less than 1,000 miles from Colombia by sea. The coastline is labyrinthine, hundreds of inlets, marinas, private docks, fishing boats, and the city's large Cuban and Colombian immigrant populations provided ready-made community networks for anyone who needed to move product quietly. Griselda Blanco understood all of this before almost anyone else did. She arrived in Miami in the mid-1970s and began building what would become the most sophisticated cocaine distribution network in the United States, years before Pablo Escobar's Medellín Cartel became the dominant force in global cocaine supply. Let that register for a moment. The infrastructure that made Miami the cocaine capital of America, the distribution networks, the money laundering operations, the corruption of local law enforcement, was largely built by Griselda Blanco. Not by Escobar, not by the Cali cartel, by a Colombian woman in her early 30s who had arrived in the city with nothing but a method and a network. The DEA did not know her name for nearly 4 years. In a world where male drug traffickers assumed the top positions and women were assumed to be peripheral, wives, girlfriends, couriers, a woman running the operation was not something investigators were looking for. She used that blind spot with precision. By the time the DEA began developing intelligence on the Miami cocaine trade, Griselda Blanco was already controlling the majority of it. She was known in the criminal world by a name that needed no translation: La Madrina, the Godmother. Then came July 11th, 1979, and Miami would never be the same again. By 1979, she would trigger the first mass public shooting in the American cocaine war. That story is next. The Dadeland Mall sits in the southern suburbs of Miami. In 1979, it was one of the busiest shopping centers in Florida. Families, teenagers, Saturday afternoon crowds. At 2:48 p.m. on July 11th, 2 men walked into Crown Liquors, a store inside the mall. They were carrying submachine guns. They opened fire on 2 men standing at the counter, a Griselda Blanco associate and his bodyguard, both targets in a dispute over a cocaine debt. The shooting didn't stop inside the store. One of the gunmen continued firing into the car park. A panel van they had arrived in, later found abandoned, was fitted with gun ports. It had been purpose-built for the attack. By the time it was over, 2 people were dead and others were wounded. Bullet casings were scattered across the car park floor.
Ralph, the shootout occurred at about 2:30 this afternoon when 2 or more Latin males entered the Crown Liquor Store here on the west end of the Dadeland Mall. They were followed by 2 or 3 other Latin males, and then the shooting began.
There was an exchange of fire between the 2 groups. Right now, 2 people are dead, and there are others injured. Right now, I don't know the exact amount of people.
Okay, what would the amount of weaponry in that van indicate to you as far as the nature of this incident is concerned?
Well, they were well armed, we can say that, and they came prepared to do battle.
Ralph, the 2 other men who were injured were both store employees. None of the victims has yet been identified. As Sergeant Piper said, both groups apparently were well armed. An automatic weapon was found in the store. A delivery van, reportedly used by the second group, was found abandoned in the north side of the mall with the door open and the motor running. 2 shotguns, 3 machine guns, 5 pistols, and a number of flak vests were inside the van. Police spent more than an hour searching the neighborhood for suspects, but they weren't able to turn anybody up. The suspects are apparently still at large. Police say they don't know what the motive was for the shootings, but they are sure it wasn't robbery. Again, they have not said that it was drug-related, but that is certainly a possibility. They just opened the doors of the liquor store back up. The dead men, the victims, are still inside the liquor store, and the investigation is continuing. We'll have further details on it tonight at 11 o'clock. Bob Lawrence, live at the Dadeland Mall.
Shoppers had run for their lives. It was the first mass public shooting in the American cocaine war. Nothing on this scale had happened before on US soil in the drug trade. The DEA had been tracking Colombian violence in private, informant killings, bodies found in warehouses. But this was a shopping mall on a Saturday afternoon in suburban Miami. The American public saw it for the first time. This wasn't a problem happening in Colombia, it was here. The Dadeland massacre put every law enforcement agency in the United States on notice, and it had Griselda Blanco's fingerprints all over it. The investigation that followed would eventually lead to the most significant manhunt for a female criminal in DEA history. But before that happened, before the agency fully understood who they were dealing with, Griselda Blanco would expand her operation further, order hundreds more killings, and pioneer a method of assassination that Colombian cartels would export to the rest of the world: the motorcycle killing. That story is next. She invented the motorcycle assassination. The DEA is coming. The story continues. The motorcycle killing was not an accident. It was an invention. Before Griselda Blanco, Colombian drug cartels killed in private, executions in warehouses, bodies found in rivers, violence that happened behind closed doors. Griselda changed the method. A gunman on the back of a motorcycle, a driver who asked no questions, a route planned in advance, a target tracked and identified. The hit completed in seconds on a public street, in traffic, at a market, at a red light. The motorcycle gone before anyone understood what had happened. She introduced this method to the Miami cocaine wars. Colombian cartels exported it to the rest of the world. The motorcycle assassination is now one of the most common methods of targeted killing in Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. A method born in the streets of 1970s Miami. The DEA spent years building the case. Operation Banshee, the first federal task force specifically targeting Griselda Blanco. By 1981, investigators had connected her to dozens of murders. Her network had generated an estimated $2 billion. She had survived assassination attempts, survived the collapse of every partnership, survived everything Miami had thrown at her.
She walked away from all of it.
In 1984, she moved from Miami to Irvine, California, a quiet suburban city in Orange County, the kind of place no one would look. She lived under a false identity. She continued managing her operation by telephone. On February 17, 1985, DEA agents arrested Griselda Blanco at her home in Irvine. No dramatic standoff, no car chase, no shootout. They knocked on her door. She answered it. The most dangerous woman in the American cocaine war was arrested in a suburban house in Southern California. The trial was complicated. Her primary witness, her chief hitman, who had turned state's evidence,
This court finds the defendant guilty as charged on all counts.
Was disqualified after a scandal involving phone calls made from prison. His testimony, which would have secured multiple murder convictions, was thrown out. Griselda Blanco was convicted of 3 murders, sentenced to 15 years. For a woman believed to have ordered an estimated 200 killings, it was a remarkably short sentence. She served her time. In 2004, at the age of 64, she was released from federal custody and immediately deported to Colombia. Medellín, the city where her story had started. She lived quietly, out of sight. The woman who had controlled $1 billion empire sat in the city of her childhood and waited out the years. On September 3rd, 2012, Griselda Blanco was standing outside a butcher shop in Medellín. A motorcycle pulled up and fired a single shot to the back of her head. She was 69 years old. The method she had invented, the system she had built, the tools she had given to the criminal world. It came back for her on a Tuesday afternoon outside a butcher shop in Medellín. The motorcycle drove away. That is how Griselda Blanco died. La Madrina, the Godmother, born in Cartagena in 1943, died in Medellín in 2012. She built the infrastructure that made the American cocaine trade possible. She pioneered methods of violence still used today. She moved through a world that was never built for her, and she built her own world inside it. The motorcycle that killed her was not revenge for any single thing. It was simply the world she had made, settling the account. That is Cartel Chronicles. Every episode, we go deeper into the criminal empires that shaped the modern world, the men and women behind them, the methods they invented, the systems that outlasted them. If this story kept you watching, subscribe. Every new episode drops on this channel, and the next one is already coming. The story is never really over. It just moves on to the next name.